Welcome back to my YouTube channel. It's JVceo. If you're tuning in for the first time, then don't subscribe just yet. Wait till you've watched at least 4 minutes, and if you like what you see, then subscribe. Anyways, I get a lot of these questions on Snapchat. Excuse my voice, right? I get a lot of these questions on Snapchat. Should I buy a residential property to live in, or should I buy an investment property to invest in and jump on a property ladder super early and build wealth and so on and so forth? So I'll be addressing it in this video. But firstly, I'm not an accountant, I'm not a financial advisor, so don't take anything that I say as face value. Always consult with, a financial advisor. That's firstly. Secondly, I'm not going to deal with the superficial points such as, buying your own home gives you the power of creativity, build your home how you want it, and so on and so forth. We don't really care about that. We're going to talk about some real hardcore points. Right, before we even get into the pros and cons of both areas, let's just talk about the background. Firstly, it depends on your age. That will determine what sort of decision or what direction you choose to go in. So, the younger you are, the less need you feel to go off and get a residential purchase, because then you can stay at home, pay less rent, and so on and so forth, and then use that money and buy investment properties. It depends on your individual life circumstances. So let's assume, bam, impregnated your wife, she's pregnant now, and you wanted to build a family around that. Now that's different. You're playing a completely different game. Now you're playing a family game. So maybe it's better in your particular situation to go and make a residential purchase, because then you don't want to have a child in a rented home and so on and so forth. Fourthly, it depends on your long-term strategy. If you're someone like myself and you're looking to acquire hundreds and thousands of properties, then perhaps where you're laying your head is the least of your worries. You'd lay your head in the back of your car if you have to, as long as you're able to get just another buy-to-let purchase or another investment property. You'd sleep in the boot of your car if you could get just another investment property. So that's I'm in that category. So that's what I mean in terms of the background. But now moving on from that, let's talk about the pros and cons of a residential mortgage. Firstly, the pros for a residential mortgage is a lot of people don't realize this. By the way, before I say this point, be very careful and make inquiries with your lender directly. But, you can do what I call home hacking. A lot of people say, right, if I was to talk about a disadvantage, it would be, your house is a money pit, which can be correct. Your house can be a money pit. But now let's imagine you're able to house hack. What is house hacking? House hacking is, essentially speaking, when you're able to own your home, but also rent it out at the same time. So now let's say you bought a 3-bedroom house, you occupy 1 bedroom, and then you share the other bedrooms, and let's say you're getting $350 a room on the other 2 bedrooms. So now you're making £700 a month. And let's assume you have a garage space, and let's say you're able to rent that for £50 to £100 a month. Now that's, again, additional income that you're making. And maybe your mortgage is only £500 a month, or maybe £600 a month. So that payment you receive from the renters covers your mortgage payment. So now, is your residential home really a money pit? I'll leave you to ponder on that whilst we go on to point number 2. There are so many advantages of being a first-time buyer, and a first-time buyer means you've never owned any property. Bear in mind, once you make an investment purchase, you lose this opportunity to be a first-time buyer. It might be the Help to Buy schemes. It might be all the other government supports, the ISAs, and so on and so forth. There's a lot geared towards, first-time buyers. And do you really want to lose that advantage by purchasing or making investment properties? If you're just looking to do 1 investment property or 2 investment properties, then I wouldn't say it's worth it. I would say you're better off holding off, doing your residential, taking full advantage of all the opportunities that presents itself, and then moving on to investment properties. Whereas if you're someone like myself and your long-term goal is investment properties, owning a bunch of it, then it doesn't really make a difference. You might as well, the benefits outweighs, the loss in losing your first-time buyer opportunity in a residential space. So that's my opinion to it. Now moving on to point number 3 in terms of the advantages of residential purchases. It is usually a lot cheaper to actually do a residential purchase than a buy-to-let purchase. Firstly, from a stamp duty point of view, I believe it's up to 300,000. It is stamp duty free as a first-time buyer, and obviously you can take full advantage of this. And even from 300,000 to £500,000, there's a surcharge to be paid, but again, you get, I think, about a £5,000 discount. So again, that's huge when you're talking property numbers. Moving on from that, let's talk about deposits. Still within the same point, right? If you were doing a first-time mortgage, for example, on a residential purchase, you have the opportunity, maybe not now because of coronavirus, but prior to coronavirus, you had the opportunity of putting down potentially 5%, but more generally, 10 to 15%, which is a far cry away from what you expected to put down if you're doing an investment purchase. So if you were doing a buy-to-let, as a rule of thumb, standard, you are putting down 25%, which is, a big leap. And it's a huge barrier to entry. So potentially, if you are looking to get on the property market quicker, then maybe the residential purchase is the route to go, because it is cheaper in that sense. So that's the third advantage of it. And so now moving on to the fourth advantage of a residential purchase over a buy-to-let investment is, you start your journey a lot quicker. You actually end up paying your mortgage a lot earlier. Now imagine, really starting your residential journey or residential mortgage journey at the age of, let's say, 35 or at the age of 40, and you don't really have a lot behind you. Now you're paying a 25-year mortgage all the way into your 65s. Whereas if you started real early, imagine you started at 21 or you started at 25, sorry, that means you're paying it off at maybe 50 or potentially 46. So that's the advantage of obviously going down the route of making that residential purchase and started early, because then the earlier you start, the earlier you own your home, essentially speaking. And now the point you're waiting for, right? When you do a residential purchase, you obviously avoid paying rent. Now, I'll give you a very typical example. I used to rent a place with my brothers for, this was a few years back, probably about 4 years ago, and we paid around £2,000 a month. But I obviously done some research, and I found out from speaking with the landlady and so on and so forth, I found out that this property was, in fact, she was actually paying £800 a month to the lender that she obviously had the mortgage with, but we were paying her £2,000. So essentially speaking, £1,200 of the money we were paying her was dead money. If we had owned that property, we would have been paying £800. So we wasted, and we were there for about 2 years. So we wasted £1,200 every single month. Dead money. Money will never get back again. That's over. I think that's probably around, I'd say maybe around 26,000 over that 2-year period. Dead money. Money will never get back. So that's, an advantage of going down the residential route first, because like I said, it prevents you from renting. And now on to the sixth and final point. A lot of you might want to go down the investment route, but did you know the lenders are more keen on people that have actually owned their own residential mortgage for at least a period of 6 months. So if you have owned your own property for 6 months, then they're more inclined to then offer you potentially better rates or maybe a wider variety of services on the investment property side of things. So now if you're at a stage where you don't own a residential purchase and you're trying to jump into the buy-to-let market, you might find it difficult, or at least you might find that the offers you're getting is very limited in terms of the rates and so on and so forth. So that's a huge advantage in terms of doing a residential mortgage first. But now we can't be biased, so we will move over to the other side of things, and I'll talk about the advantages of doing an investment purchase first as opposed to a residential one. Change the scenery. But anyways, onto the second half of the video, investment purchases, right? A huge advantage for me when it comes to investment purchases is it's a fantastic way to build wealth. Literally fantastic way to build wealth. When you think about it, what's achievable when you start buying investment properties, you can't really achieve that when you're doing residential purchase. And then moving on from that, I want you guys to think about how to structure your investment purchase. If you actually structure your investment purchase right, it could end up paying for your residential purchase in future. And what does that look like? Let's now imagine that you've accumulated a sizable portfolio. You're earning maybe £7,500 to £10,000 a month from your investment purchases. Obviously, bear in mind you've got your tax to think about, but let's simplify it a bit. Let's imagine now you've gone and got a big mortgage on a big nice house out in the sticks somewhere, and your mortgage payment on your residential purchase is £3,000. Technically speaking, those investment purchases is more than able to fund that £3,000 residential mortgage for you, and that's the beautiful thing about it. So it's almost like you go the long way, but that long way end up making life easier for you in future. But it doesn't just stop there. It doesn't just stop at your investment purchases being able to pay your mortgage for you. Let's take it a step further. Now, let's imagine you make an investment purchase, and let's say you pay 80 grand for the house. You put down a 20 grand deposit, which is basically 25%. You put down a 20 grand deposit. You put in another 10,000 or maybe 15,000 doing up the house. So now you've spent all in all 95 grand, or well, the house now is 95 grand in it. And let's say you're able to get that house revalued at, let's say, 120,000, 130,000, because you've increased the value significantly, right? For you increasing the value significantly and then being able to refinance and pull your money out, maybe pulling out 20 grand, maybe pulling out 30 grand, whatever it is you're able to pull out during the refinance process, that money now could go over and fund your deposit when it comes to buying your residential purchase, if that makes any sense. Moving on from there now, when it comes to buy-to-lets, your options are limitless. Whereas when it comes to residential purchase, as much as I said you are flexible in designing the house how you want it, but you're not that flexible in terms of what you can do with it. Now, if we're talking investment properties, you could potentially, do a HMO. And you could earn a good amount of money from a HMO as compared to a standard buy-to-let. So, your strategy could literally be investing in some very good cash flowing properties, which then, essentially speaking, supplements your income by adding another source of income to yourself. So if you're working a regular 9 to 5, automatically now, if you've got 2 buy-to-lets, 3 buy-to-lets, and you're earning £1,000 a month from it, that's basically almost like half another salary, if that makes any sense. You would never really get that from a residential purchase. As I explained earlier on, a residential purchase might help you paying off your mortgage, but that's about what it would do. It's very rare that you could take a substantial amount of profit from it. Whereas now, if we're talking investment properties, you could do a serviced accommodation. I have a mate of mine, for example, he has a serviced accommodation. One of the properties that he owns, he converted it from a 4-bedroom to a 10-bedroom, and he earns upwards of £4,000 or £5,000 every single month on that property, with a huge markup on it, huge profit, but that's what you get when you're investing in property. Now, if he had put in the same amount of money in a residential property, do you think he would earn anything close to £5,000 a month, £7,000 a month in some months? He would never do that. Now he's got 10 bedrooms that rent at around £35 a day per room. Now do the maths on that. And when there's a football going on, or when there's some boxing event, he ends up charging £100 a room, £80 a room, and he has 10 bedrooms, with all bathrooms in them and so on and so forth. But that's the limitless possibilities I talk about when it comes to investment properties, which then leads me on to point number 4. This is a point that I've already vaguely touched upon, but it gives you another source of income. So now, if we spoke about these 2 things in plain terms, right? Residential prevents you from paying rent. If you go down the investment route, potentially, it not only pays your rent for you, but it also leaves a substantial amount of money in your pocket, all depending on the strategy that you work with. But also, you have the ability of raising money through refinancing, especially if you're doing a BRR. That's the buy, the refurb, the refinance, and rent. That's what that means, BRRR. So, like I said at the start, I don't think there's a right or wrong answer. My job is to present you with the facts, and then you make a decision for yourself. Me personally, I would always rather an investment purchase over a residential purchase, because my guess is a lot of people that are on this channel watching this video right now, you're probably, I don't know, maybe 18 to 30. If you are at that age, is it vital that you move out of home? Not necessarily. You know, if you can stay at home for as long as you can, then do it. Don't get caught up into the hype and so on and so forth. You know, stay at home for as long as you can, save your money, buy investment properties. That in the long run would make you a lot more profit than whatever your residential mortgage can make you. And it's a lot more flexible in terms of what you could do with it. You could do a standard single let, you could do a HMO, you could do a serviced accommodation, you could rent it to the council potentially as an emergency accommodation. There's so many things that you can do. But anyways, that's my take on it. If there's anything that you think I've missed, then just drop it in the comment section. Let's have a conversation about it. But thank you for watching, and I'll see you next Sunday at 6 p.m. Thank you, and subscribe, comment, and like.